the proud loaf, and the humble grain. On the highest shelf of Master Baker's shop sat a magnificent loaf of bread, its golden crust gleaming in the morning sunlight. The loaf had been shaped with extra care, its surface scored in elegant patterns that caught the light just so. Steam still rose faintly from its perfectly rounded form, and the rich aroma of fresh-baked wheat filled the entire shop. The loaf puffed with pride as customers entered, their eyes immediately drawn upward. "Oh, what a beautiful loaf!" they would exclaim, pointing at its lustrous crust. "Look at me!" the bread boasted loudly to a small sack of wheat grains sitting quietly on the lower shelf below. "See how beautiful I am, how perfectly golden, how wonderfully I smell. Everyone who enters admires me first. And what are you? Just plain, dull little seeds that nobody even notices. You're so ordinary, so insignificant." The wheat grains said nothing, resting peacefully in their humble burlap sack. They had heard such words before, and knew that true worth wasn't measured by the loudness of one's voice. "Don't you have anything to say?" The bread pressed on. "Aren't you ashamed to be so plain when someone as magnificent as I sits nearby?" Still, the grains remained silent, content in their simple existence. Day after day, the bread continued its boasting. "I am the finest creation in this bakery. Surely I'm destined for the most important table in town. Perhaps the mayor himself will choose me, or the wealthy merchant's family." But as the sun moved across the sky each day, newer, fresher loaves arrived from the baker's oven. The morning customers chose the day's fresh baking, their warm steam and soft crusts more appealing than yesterday's bread. By afternoon, even fresher loaves appeared, and still the proud bread remained on its high shelf. "They simply don't recognize quality when they see it," the bread huffed indignantly. "They're fools to choose those common loaves over someone as special as me." As the days passed, the bread's beautiful golden crust began to harden. Small cracks appeared along its surface, and its once perfect aroma grew stale. Soon, spots of green mold began to bloom across its crust, like tiny, unwelcome flowers. "This cannot buy," cried the bread. "I am too magnificent to spoil." That afternoon, an old farmer entered the shop. He glanced once at the moldy bread and shook his head. But when he saw the sack of wheat grains, his weathered face brightened. "These are fine seeds," he said, examining the grain carefully. "Perfect for planting." He purchased the entire sack and carried it home to his fields. The baker swept the spoiled bread into the waste bin with disappointment, muttering about pride leading to waste. Meanwhile, the humble wheat grains were carried to the farmer's fields and scattered across rich, dark soil that had been prepared with care. With gentle spring rains and warm summer sun, each tiny grain began its quiet transformation. First, pale green shoots pushed through the earth. Then sturdy stalks grew tall and strong, swaying gently in the breeze. By late summer, each stalk bore dozens of new grains, golden and full of promise. At harvest time, that small sack of grain had multiplied into acres upon acres of wheat. The farmers' barns overflowed with grain that would be ground into flour, baked into bread, and shared at countless tables throughout the long winter months. Children would grow strong from its nourishment, families would gather around meals it provided, and the cycle of humble service would continue. The wheat had learned long ago that true worth comes not from pride in one's appearance, but from quiet service to others. Moral: those who serve humbly will flourish long after the proud have faded.